I'd like to acknowledge the presence of former Vice-Chancellor Emeritus Professor Don Aitkin and Beverly Aitkin, former Chancellor of the University Emeritus Professor Ingrid Moses and John Moses. I'd like to welcome council members, alumni, adjuncts, staff and students of the university, members of the general public, and of course our guest speaker and performer, Ms. Robyn Archer. I begin by paying my respects to the Ngunnawal people, whom I acknowledge are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. The staff and students of the University of Canberra acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and the region. And I'd like to acknowledge and welcome Indigenous people who are attending this event this evening. Welcome to this building. If it is the first time you've been here, opened just under a year ago, the Inspire Centre is where we experiment with and think about the best uses of information technologies for teaching and research. It is our newest building on campus, but not for long, as you can see by much of the building work going on around us. Before I introduce the guest speaker, I should make a few comments about the lecture series itself and the person after whom it was named. The Don Aitkin series began in 2005 and invites prominent Australian and international scholars and thinkers to bring their research and insights to bear on major social, scientific and cultural issues. Don Aitkin served as Vice-Chancellor from 1991, shortly after this institution became a university, until 2002. Don is an historian and political scientist and has been a noted public intellectual in Australian life for many decades. He was Professor of Politics at Macquarie University in the 1970s and then Professor of Political Science at the Research School of Social Sciences at the ANU. In 1988, he was appointed the Foundation Chairman of the Australian Research Council, and it was from that post that he joined the University of Canberra. The inaugural Don Aitkin Lecture was delivered by Don himself, and subsequent speakers have included Dr. Jeff Gallop, former Western Australian Premier, who is now in academic life, Mr. John Dawkins, amongst other things, the architect of the current higher education system in Australia, and Dr. Tom Calma, the then Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, who is presently the university's Deputy Chancellor. And so to tonight's speaker, Robyn Archer AO. Robyn is a singer, performer, writer, director, and public advocate for the arts. She's currently creative director for the Centenary of Canberra and is artistic director of The Light in Winter at Federation Square, Melbourne. She's previously been an artistic director or advisor for numerous festivals, nationally and internationally. Robyn is an adjunct professor at the University of Canberra and was awarded an honorary doctorate by the university in recognition of her outstanding contribution to the arts, locally, nationally, and internationally. She also holds honorary doctorates from Flinders University and the University of Sydney. Robyn is an Officer of the Order of Australia and holds similar honours in France and Belgium. In 2006, she was awarded the International Citation of Merit by the International Society of Performing Arts, and in 2009, the Dame Elizabeth Murdoch ABAF Award for Cultural Leadership. She is patron of the Australian Art Orchestra in Melbourne, Brink Productions in Adelaide, the Australian Script Centre in Hobart, and the Arts Law Society in Sydney, and most recently co-patron with Judge Ian North of the Institute of Post-Colonial Studies in Melbourne. This year, she's given a National Press Club address titled Taking the Name of the Capital in Vain, delivered the Arthur Boyd Memorial Lecture in London, and presented the keynote opening of the European Festivals Association Atelier, or workshop. Over the last 8 weeks, Robyn Archer has promoted the Centenary of Canberra programme in person in Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, Brisbane, Hobart, Lucknow, Delhi, London, Washington, Chicago, Ljubljana, and Goolwa. The Don Aitkin series fits within our overall programme of public lectures called Challenge Your Mind. Robyn will do this by explaining how Canberra in 2013 offers the perfect landscape for 100 journeys of contemplation and investigation. To deliver the 2012 Don Aitkin Lecture on the theme 100 Chants to Challenge the Mind, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the extraordinarily busy Robyn Archer.
100 chants to challenge the mind. 12, 11, 12. Spooky date, really. 12, 11, 12. Appropriately for an exercise in challenging the mind. The 172nd anniversary of the birth of Auguste Rodin, sculptor of The Thinker, which embellishes Google today. Also from the City of Light, as she lay dying in Paris, the American author Gertrude Stein asked, "What is the answer?" There was a deathly hush, and receiving no reply, she said with her last breath, "In that case, what is the question?" 1. I once did a concert at a place called Minda. I thought Minda was for a place for disabled young children. I discovered in a journey after the pantomime, where I customarily played the witch, that there were in fact older people housed in this institution. I walked into a room and in the distance I saw an old woman, white-haired, bathed in sunlight, and the director of the place said to me, I was about 19 at the time, "Go and touch her. She has had no sight or sound or speech since birth." And I went and touched her, bathed in sunlight as she was, and probably felt the nearest thing that I shall ever feel to God. She shared none of the things that I share in terms of sensory reception of the world. She had no familiar concepts that we could share. We had no way to communicate except that I would touch her and she resonated, and there was an aura, and I could only think, what is going on inside? What has been going on inside this woman for 70 odd years without any of those tools which we presume is what life is all about? For me, it was like thinking about the universe, like trying to think about infinity. And this can be done superbly from Mount Stromlo throughout next year, with open days and stargazing evenings and tours of the site. So 1, contemplate the universe. 2, yes, there are 100 of these. Is it similarly challenging to contemplate the deepest oceans or the geological depths of the earth? They are apparently finite, but will anyone ever really make a journey to the centre of the earth? Deep Oceans is a great exhibition on at Questacon where you can start that quest. Karst Country is a whole exhibition of landscape paintings which look at the geology of the land around here out at Belconnen Arts Centre. Geoscience Australia, there are displays all year, and there's a new rock garden emerging, big rocks on the shore of the lake. What lies beneath? 3. This life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you see with, not through the eye. The old lady at Minda could not see, nor hear, nor speak, but clearly her soul was intact. She is Blake's angel. We should be aware of that aspect of humanity, the ones who see far more than we. For them next year, the Centenary Gardens, the SCENT, Centenary Gardens. Imagine how good for the mental health of all of us to walk amongst a fragrant scented garden once a day. This year we planted sweet peas in pots. Now I smell them morning and evening, no matter how busy I am. University of Canberra landscape architecture students with a great mob called Canberra Lab as mentors, smart, young Canberran architects and landscapers will bring these centenary gardens at Calvary and the Canberra Hospital to life next year as a lasting legacy for the use of mental health patients and others, we hope. 4. When did architecture surface again as sexy? It has always been for some, but now it's popular. You just don't get that many TV shows about houses and restoration and history of architecture and even the happiness of architecture without there being some renewed interest outside simply specialists. So, is the role of an architect to make a name for herself? To build for spectacle, Gehry, Hadid, Piano, Foster, the whole massive gargantuan thing of Museum Island in Abu Dhabi? Or to build good places for people to live and work in? Can you do both? Can you do both at the same time? From Griffin, and therefore before that, Burnham and Sullivan, through Murdoch, John Smith, Boyd and Grounds to Jurgler and Cox and supposed design office, and on to the imaginary world of hypotheticals about the capital and the lodge, the Centenary of Canberra offers a paradise of themes and projects around architecture and design. I'll build a stairway to paradise with a new step every day. 5. Why are there so many good designers and so much bad design? Who says what's good or bad? Who are the arbiters of excellence these days? Do you think that there's a lingering desire to mess with Walt's plan, just as there is to mess with Oscars in Brasilia? Mess around, they're doing the mess around, they're doing the mess around, everybody's doing the mess around. Thank you, God of the blues, Ray Charles. You give your hand to me, and then you say goodbye. I watch you walk away beside that lucky guy to never, never know the one who loves you so. Oh, you don't know me. Sightless Ray Charles, whom I have seen perform live twice in the USA, but have never seen Elton John, but will on Wednesday night in Canberra. Rocket Man, and it seems to me Marilyn, not Diana, that you lived your life like a candle in the wind. 6. Why do people resist change and try to make things seem permanent? We are all candles in the wind. My song is over the minute I sing it, yet its traces remain. The trees of Canberra too. Lindsay Pryor knew they would decline and need to be replaced. Pradip Krishen knows it also about the trees of Delhi. The arboretum grows up out of the ashes of a firestorm. A play arises out of the life and death and life and death and life of Jill Hicks, the Adelaide woman who will be here to talk about it, who lost her legs and actually died many times on the roads in London during the bombings. Brecht's palindromic poem, Everything Changes. You can make a fresh start with your final breath. But what has happened, and the water you once poured into the wine cannot be drained off again. What has happened, has happened. The water you once poured into the wine cannot be drained off again, but everything changes. You can make a fresh start with your final breath. 7. Unmarked graves. Walter Burley Griffin and the person who took him to India, Ronald Craig, whose grave was unmarked until 36 hours before I went there for the first time. They found the grave, they sealed it, they put a plaque, and we were able not only to make a libation of Lake Burley Griffin water on Walter's grave, but also on the grave of Ronald. I've just been invited to be plaqued in a pavement. I'm honoured, and I will accept, but in fact, I am already in a pavement in that same city. Do I need a grave? You see, after a particular one-woman show that I was doing, that I did on and off for 4 years, after the 100th performance, I was so sick of the girdle in which my radio mic sat that after the 100th performance, the crew and I went outside onto the pavement outside the stage door, handed round a Jeroboam of champagne and burnt the girdle, which with foul smell, I have to say, melted simply into the pavement of that city. Therefore, do I need a plaque? And do I even need a grave? Who cares? I find it sad that Alice B. Toklas is around the back of Gertrude Stein and ignored, hidden, a lezo with a mo at Père Lachaise Cemetery. And I love the fact that Edith Piaf's grave there always has fresh flowers on it. Friends of mine lived in an apartment with a view of close by Sacré-Cœur, and Rossini was buried in the graveyard there beneath them. Better to go in the fire? Not sure. Death at sea? Marion Marnie Griffin, also lay in an unmarked grave until the 90s. Now she has a plaque. Burnham has rocks, beautiful, animistic big rocks in the middle of an island in the cemetery, and also with his family. Louis Sullivan's first name is spelt incorrectly. I have a friend who's going to commission a sound interactive installation for her grave once she goes. As you walk by, the sound will pop up and the voice will say, "Hi, glad you popped in." Dum, da-dum, da-dum, non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. 8. Why did Marion leave India so quickly and thus leave Walt in an unmarked grave? Her words about his last minutes are unbelievably moving. I had to recite them at the grave and was almost in tears as she said she sat with him and she talked to him about their wonderful life together, and then he fixed her gaze and held it. And the gaze was as such he had never contemplated death. And she held that gaze with him until he drew his final breath, and she then closed his eyes. Perhaps they never needed graves. 9. We praise modern medicine. We praise research. It's all around us, especially here, especially in Canberra. But modern medicine is keeping us alive in cruel ways. Marion descended into dementia and died ignominiously, both of them for such amazing minds. Now we are preserved unnaturally to the point where we must suffer our decline, especially our mental decline. The brain decays, the body is kept going cruelly to witness this. Why is there such fear around us being able to choose the moment of our death with dignity? Isn't it inevitable that we must go this way when a young generation cannot afford to keep the older, larger one alive so long? The John Curtin Medical Research Centre at ANU will host any number of medical science events in Canberra next year, including the Fenner Festival of Ideas. There's an idea. We have to start seriously considering euthanasia. And I'm not scared of dying, and I don't really care if it's peacetime you find in dying. Let the time be near. If it's peace you find in dying, then let the time be near. Just bundle up my coffin, 'cause it's cold way down there, baby. It's cold down there, yes, it's crazy cold way down there. And when I die, and when I'm gone, there'll be one child born in this world to carry on, carry on. 10. Everyone takes snaps. Snaps of the newborn. Snaps of the kitty cats. Instagram is, as it says, instant. Next year, little kids in Canberra will make documentary films through Sprout Media. Is it like blogging? Is it natural selection of the best? What succeeds is what people like most, what is popular. What place then? Expertise, critical analysis. We have excellent photography all over 2013 where we can see how well it can be done and humbly resign ourselves to the amateur status. Heidi Smith, Ingvar Gnepe, Things, that is our greatest photographers at the National Library who took pictures of objects. Elvis at 21, marvellous sets of photographs. Max Dupin on assignment, Lens, Love, and we have its history and evidence at the NFSA, Utopian Cinema, and at the National Archives of Australia, the Mildenhall Collection. Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. 11. Is cultural democracy a good thing? If everyone can record images, and everyone can put words together in one way or another, what place does excellence have? Excellence is not democratic. We can have the right to experience excellence, that's democratic, But not everyone is excellent at everything. So what place excellence? So if you like to swing on a star, carry moonbeams home in a jar, and be better off than you are, you could turn out to be 12. Can we examine the exact nature of creativity? Why are artists in particular so prized and despised? A sports star goes higher and faster. A celebrity makes most money and creates glamour. An entertainer entertains. An artist, by definition, takes risks. Watch out for Patricia Piccinini next year and Circa in Wunderkammer. Oscar Wilde once said, "All art is at once surface and symbol. Those who go beneath the surface do so at their peril. Those who read the symbol do so at their peril. It is the spectator and not life that art really mirrors. Diversity of opinion about a work of art shows that the work is new, complex, and vital. When critics disagree, the artist is in accord with himself." 13, what exactly happens when we thrill to art? Ramachandran says nothing lights up the synapses like new art. We have so much new art next year, new plays, new music, new poems, new exhibitions. These are the texts which Andrew Schultz has used for Symphony No. 3, and they will be sung, the choral part of the symphony, sung unaccompanied, and it's called Three Architects. The words are from Three American Architects. Burnham is sung by a children's choir. Make no little plans, they have no magic. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work. A noble plan, a diagram, once drawn, is made. A noble, logical diagram, once recorded, will never die, but will be, when we are dead, a living thing. It will insist, let your watchword be order and your beacon beauty. Sullivan is sung by an adult choir to the children's choir. Do you or do you not intend to be architects in whose care democracy may entrust its dreams and aspirations? I warn you, the time left for an answer is acutely brief. For as young as you are not as young as you were yesterday. And tomorrow? Tomorrow. Griffin is sung by the combined choirs. Unity is essential to the city. So complex a problem requires a simple organism, purity in proportion and unity in scale. Eliminate the useless, eliminate what serves no role, a general simplicity, a maximum of repetition, a maximum of rhythm, honest, direct solutions. A civilization of aspiring ideals so limitless, greater than any on earth, number, size, scale, elevation. Imagine all of that sung outdoors to 100,000 people on March the 11th. That's something to contemplate. 14, why do we like some places and not others? Why do we move about? What happens when our movement is restricted? Check out Boho Collective's new show about mobility in the city and Canberra Youth Theatre's 35 degrees 17 south. Oh, give me land, lots of land in a country that I love. Don't fence me in. Hot town, summer in the city. Back of my neck getting dirty and gritty. If I could just get off of that LA freeway without getting killed or caught, we'll build a sweet little nest somewhere in the west and let the rest of the world go by. 15, why do some people like buildings and the art of architecture? I was just shown around Chicago by an amazing man, and I now know that every city needs one of these, the cultural historian of the city of Chicago. And I said to Tim Samuelson, how did you get turned onto buildings? How did you get this information? He said, I had it from the very start. I used to force my parents to take me into buildings, to look at all the old buildings in Chicago. Now, this is a habit we could inflict upon the children of Canberra. It's such a showplace of interesting buildings with such fantastic histories, such great design. We could show them around. Parliament House, Old Parliament House, the Shine Dome, Manning Clark House, the Irish Embassy, Nishi, John Curtin and Cockington Green next year with a new model of the original Canberra house. On and on and on and on, because our house is a very, very, very fine house. 16. Here's some other stuff you could look into next year. The bionic eye. Have we all heard about the bionic eye? A pair of glasses with a camera for people who have no sight, like Ray Charles and like Gurumul Yunupingu, who have no sight. And a small camera sits here and it captures images and it translates those images, communicates them to a chip in the back of the person's head, and that translates into knowledge about navigation. So people can see that there's something there. They even are starting experiments about a zoom lens so that when you focus there, you might be able to actually see what the thing is. Absolutely amazing. And I say that I hear about HIV treatment that's being investigated at the moment, the kind of treatment that might change Africa and Southeast Asia. And Brian Walker from CSIRO says to me, but how will you feed and water them? If so many more people stay alive, how will you feed and water them? How do we reconcile wanting to prevent disease, immunology is a star area in Canberra, and prolong life, with the consequent need for more resources rather than less? 17, therefore, study resilience thinking and resilience practice. For all the fantastic ideas that are embodied in the Centenary program, here's one of the legion that I didn't get to realise. Brian Walker lives in Canberra, CSIRO fellow. I launched his latest book with David Salt, Resilience Practice, during Science Week this year. He talked about future histories, an installation that took you on several different environmental journeys depending on what choices you make now. Choose this, i.e. do nothing about climate change, and this is the path you go along and the future you or your children or grandchildren will end up in. Make a different choice and you go on a different pathway. Yes, folks, you can predict the future. I suggest to Brian that I link him and his colleagues of the Academy to the fantastic gaming technologies that live in Canberra, as this could be a superb screen-based game, a self-devised screen-based game in which you make choices and travel up different pathways in terms of climate. It's a gaming industry that's really expanding, especially here in Canberra, unlike publishing at all. And when I look at that, I think, tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you, tomorrow, you're only a day away. 18. This morning I helped launch the Invisible Thread at the formal wrap of the National Year of Reading. Has it helped? People still read, but not books. Borders is gone. Livres sans frontières. But Paper Chain remains, as does Electric Shadows and the second-hand one at Kingston. Saddest of all, in Paris, the Village Voice has folded. This is the stuff of real tragedy. However, Shakespeare & Co. survives. Have you noticed that airport bookshops have become much better? The one at Sydney Domestic, for instance, is fantastic. Can someone explain this? They used to be terrible, only popular crime, and now I can always find something to grab in desperation. This book is not one grabbed in desperation, but with pride. It's called The Invisible Thread, and it's a special centenary publication. It's available now. 19, why does Shakespeare survive? The London Olympics did almost everything from companies all around the world. Bell Shakespeare is a prosperous company in Australia. Why do companies and artists keep going with it? Is it truth or relevance? Or are people just too lazy to attempt to write new things, which might be just as good? If poetry is on the rise, why not a return to poetic drama? There's a project opening in Berlin in December, and it's all about why contemporary artists turn to Wagner. Barry Kosky apparently says on film that over his dead body in this life or the next would he ever touch Wagner. Could be a very interesting exhibition. In 2013, we have Henry IV versus the new play Thursday by Brink Productions. We have Carmina Burana versus the new work, Three Architects, Symphony No. 3. Many opportunities to think about why we cleave to the old and why we approach the new with caution. We could reverse that, you know. Probably very, very good for the brain. Embrace with love the new and approach the old with caution. I know it's only rock and roll, but I like it, and yes I do. 20, here's a hurried clutch about the arts. What does it actually cost to train an artist? This is a huge challenge because until we quantify it, we won't be able to challenge tertiary education institutions. They keep saying, not just here, don't mean in this particular place, but not here, but all over Australia, you're all running at a loss. We don't want you because you don't attract research grants, because you don't publish and so you are too expensive. Kind of depends how you define research. But numero uno, let's first agree that artists are essential. Here's a challenge for the mind and the body. Can you live a day without the product of art? There was a woman in the USA who tried to live for a year without anything made in China. She found it incredibly difficult. I'd suggest that avoiding art is exactly the same. Can you avoid music, design, imagery on a screen somewhere? I'll tell you what you'll look like and have to do. You'll be naked, you'll be wearing a blindfold, you'll have to stick husher-phones in your ears and remain somewhere completely neutral. It's sort of like those tortures where you're suspended and weightless and deprived of all sensory input. And eventually, it's the sound and the feel of your own blood coursing around your body that curdles your mind and drives you mad. I saw this in a festival curated by Romeo Castellucci, the Venice Biennale of Arts. It was a lecture on torture. It was fascinating. 21, in that case, how do we stop taking art for granted? 22, what was the last work of art that really challenged you? I mean, really turned you over, challenged your mind? Shouldn't we demand this of all art? Otherwise, is it just entertainment? I believe we have a few with that potential next year. Foley, Kankarangulpa, the Seven Sisters Dreaming, Hip Bone Sticking Out from Robyn, again Patricia Piccinini, and a small show called The Catalogue of Dreams. 23, evolution is taken for granted. Here we are. This is what we look like. This is how we have evolved. But what if it had gone differently? This is what Patricia Piccinini is all on about. And which will be the next bit to evolve? If we start having implants in here, the remote embedded in our arm that unlocks the garage when we just wave it, will we start to grow them? How will we evolve in the future? That's a good challenge for the mind. 24, or can art not create the kind of wonder that science can? You know that part of the UN Declaration of Human Rights says something like, all people have the right to enjoy the fruits of art and science. And of course, not everybody does. Neither are communicated in the media as much as sport is. See, not yet its difficulties, the training squad at the AIS next year, why people of physical prowess and great hand-eye go to art rather than sport, and vice versa. 25, yet I know art can inspire on an equal plane with sport. There's a whole arts and sports festival in Lille I've just learned about. The leap of imagination or dance or a great aria or a great song can lift the spirits as much as that goal on the run, that try, that 6 in the last innings, that superb cross-court shot. The challenge is, why do such feats inspire? What is the chemistry of inspiration? We know that sex and singing and physical exercise produce endorphins, wonderful things, whatever they are. 26, what exactly are they? But further than that, why does watching or even hearing about other performers, sports people, scientists produce their endorphins make me feel good? 27, this is the kind of question I really want art to ask me. What would you go to the Lions for? Theodora by Handel. We'll get a performance next year as oratorio. The most compelling stage version I've seen was by Peter Sellers at Glyndebourne. It was a piece in which he put this all in the contemporary world, and the singers, the two lovers, Theodora, who falls in love with a Roman soldier, he is not a Christian, he converts to Christianity, they are both condemned to die. The final aria, exquisite, is sung with them on beds, and a choreographed moment of them being injected with the lethal dose at the very end. It was incredibly moving and absolutely fantastic. But what would you go to the Lions for? What is worth dying for? I don't mean family and children, lovers, friends. We take it for granted that we'd take the bullet for them. Would we take torture for them? Maybe. It's something we don't have to think about much here because of the place we live. But it is happening all over the world. People are tortured. What principle would cause, what belief would we suffer and die for? Really, this challenges everything in us. What would we lay down our lives for? The arts are the safest place to have this dangerous conversation. See art as a weapon at the Museum of Australian Democracy next year. 28, does dancing produce endorphins? Check out Kick Up Your Heels, try dancing without a brain. It's not just the body, despite all the jokes about ballet dancers. Plenty of opportunity for you to get out and dance through 2013. 29, can everyone really dance? Can everyone really sing? If not, why not? 30, where do art and democracy meet? The Cairo Festival, at the moment, there is a festival in Cairo that came after the revolution, and it's designed to keep people on the streets so they keep up the revolutionary spirit. See a conversation about the Arab Spring at the Museum of Australian Democracy, and also an exhibition called The Art of Influence. Also the retrospective about Splinters, the old group that dared everything politically here 20 years ago, and a whole retrospective on Kevin Gilbert. Brecht's poem, Bad Times. In the bad times, will there be singing? Yes, there will be singing about the bad times. 31, why is art considered the mark of civil society? The craniofacial surgeon, Dr. David David, says you can be an expert in absolutely anything, but the only thing that gives you the overview is art. And so he was, when I last spoke to him, using James Joyce's Ulysses as the basis of a conversation with other craniofacial surgeons. Why is art considered the mark of a civil society? 32, how exactly are we going to close the gap between white Australian and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island health and life expectancy? The Indigenous program of the Centenary of Canberra is going to ask a lot of questions about this and other things. Jeffrey Gurumul Yunupingu, without sight, will sing, and we should be moved and respond with action, not just applause, but with action. Mandaway Yunupingu gave us so much joy in Yothu Yindi. He's now on dialysis in Darwin, still young. We should care. 33, how do we stop taking democracy for granted? 34, why do people rebuild in disaster-prone areas? Bushfires, earthquakes, tsunamis, especially when weather extremes will get more extreme. January is 10 years since the bushfires here. Scope will present an exhibition called Past, Present and Future, where we can lament the loss and rejoice in the effort to rebuild and to consider the future. 35, what is it about greening? Why do we love trees? City of Trees is a project by Jill Bradley. It's not just shade and cool. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. There's the Arboretum, but there's considerations of Weston and Pryor who treed this city, and greening the Cotter as well. Poverty by D.H. Lawrence. The only people I ever heard talk about my lady poverty were rich people, or people who imagined themselves rich. St. Francis himself was a rich and spoiled young man. Being born among the working people, I know poverty as a hard old hag and a monster when you're pinched for actual necessities. And whoever says she isn't is a liar. I don't want to be poor. It means I am pinched, but neither do I want to be rich. When I look at this pine tree near the sea that grows out of rock, and it plumes forth, I see it has a natural abundance. With its roots, it has a grand grip on its daily bread, and its plumes look like green cup held up to the sun and air and full of wine. I want to be like that, to have a natural abundance and plume forth and be splendid. 36, so why open a red earth garden at the Australian National Botanic Gardens? Is that something like the generosity question? I can love it if I see it in a museum, just as long as I don't have to live in that environment, because to some extent I fear it. 37, if people so love sitting outside in summer to watch films, the Senate Rose Gardens for Longford's footage of the great celebration in 1913, flicks in the sticks. If that's the case and people love it, why did drive-ins disappear? I love the drive-in. I used to park my double cabin pickup combi backwards and lie on the double mattress in the tray with a green canvas hood over the top. You don't believe that, but it's all true. And before that, when I was a kid, going to the drive-in in pyjamas, joy, bring back the drive-in, I say. 38, and why is poetry making a comeback? There's a big poetry slam. What was it about rap that brought taut, tight, tough language and rhyme back into the mouths of young people? Have you heard Omar Musa yet? I won't even try. 39, how do people fall through the cracks? Orwell talked about it in Down and Out in Paris and London. There's a film with Colin Friels called Tom White in which you see an ordinary white-collar person descend into a homeless person. How does that happen? Check out with us next year Urban Theatre Project's piece, Catalogue of Dreams, which is about kids falling through the cracks in Canberra. 40, speaking of poverty, Dilly, why are we unsympathetic? Why is it proving so tricky to get just $1 from every person in the ACT to help the kids in the Friendship City? $1. By the way, please spread the word, dollars for Dilly, $1. That's why charity is such a huge employer, just to get people interested. 41, what is the basis of financial generosity? Why does it come so easily to some and so painfully to others? At the Atelier in Europe recently, a woman talked about this street festival in Cairo, and incidentally, as they keep the revolutionary spirit alive, they won't accept any government money and they won't accept any corporate money because they don't want any branding on their festival. This, they admit, affects the quality of their festival, so I pass around the hat at the dinner. An artist from Israel says, I don't know if they'll accept my money, but he opens a little purse and he gives €5. This is a generous gesture. 42, does a lack of generosity have the same basis as hostility to refugees? Does it go, I like my life now, I like the things I can afford. If I give my money to someone I don't know, it may reduce the quality of my life. If I open up my country to someone I don't know, will my quality of life and that of my children be reduced in the future? 43, what is fear? I feared that I would have absolutely nothing to say tonight, you may agree afterwards, that I would not be able to put anything together that would challenge anyone's mind. I find I have only questions, but I never have the answers. I am not the scientist who will speak next year on polymers and the solar cells he has developed that you can print on and wrap around anything and turn it into a producer of energy. I am not Michael Kirby, who will be here to talk about human rights and the true path to solving things, that is, by changing the law. I am not that person. I can only ask the questions that point us to the people who have the answers or are working on them. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these people in this remarkable capital. 44, what future agriculture? GM foods. There's a Stelloscope exhibition. It's going to talk all about Farah and his legacy and what we're doing about GM foods at the moment. The Royal Show. It's a lasting legacy of what is a regional area. 45, what if we had been colonised by the French instead of the English? Well, the food would have been better for a start. Next year celebrates 40 years of the Alliance Française here in Canberra. And did you know that Melbourne was the very first Alliance Française outside Paris? Absolutely fantastic. And that there's a unique nature of Tilapia Park, which is the only French school in the world that's actually run by the local government. Extraordinary. 46, what price language? Why don't we scream each time another language becomes extinct? Big Art, that great company that does terrific social projects all over the country, has already brought Napaji here, will bring the show from Robyn here, is in residency at the Canberra Theatre Centre, and that's all part of the Canberra Theatre Centre's program, Collected Works Australia, book now or miss out. 47, a backhander came at us in the media about the participation of local artists next year, an accusation that we weren't using any. We did a count, more than 1,000 so far, maybe 1,500. Did you even know there were more than 1,000 local artists? Challenge is, start making your own list. 48, can artists solve the threats to the Murray-Darling system? Working with scientists, acts of imagination, not just budgets. It's because of the floods. I hear the cod has started to return. By 2050, the stocks will be back to 60% of what they were pre-European settlement. Pity we didn't just learn from Indigenous practice in the first place. One River is a project that goes up and down the Murray-Darling Basin, the whole length and breadth, with people talking to each other up and down the system. Technology helps, and so will walking. 49, so even if I can never understand what fission is, maybe I can understand how Wi-Fi works. And did the CSIRO really invent Wi-Fi? The leader of the pack will speak at the Shine Dome, and the High Court has an exhibition about what followed when no one listened. 50, why did the dish at Parkes steal Tidbinbilla's thunder? Was it really just the film or something else? NASA recently said, they tweeted during the Mars landing, thanks to all our friends in Canberra, we couldn't have done it without you. Lots and lots of ability to explore that history at the Tidbinbilla Biennial Open Day in 2013. 51, the NLA, the National Library of Australia, has a huge tapestry of a big dish. I thought it was Tidbinbilla and made that connection in a very public speech there last week. Guess what? I was wrong. I feel stupid. Is this part of fear? Fear of looking stupid? Is it really why people avoid art? Because they think they won't understand it and so appear to be stupid? Is it the rush of adrenaline produced by fear, which I am addicted to, and explains why I keep agreeing to stand up in front of people saying things which might well be very stupid? 52, the particular notion of doing things alone. Solo at the Street is a great program of actors that you will see doing acts of bravura. They will stand alone. They will do things there like I love tennis, because you can get 4 hours of two men standing, pitting against each other, and they can't talk to anyone while they're doing. They have no comfort in this. It's like that with solo shows. If we love company, if we love companions, if we mostly live in society, why do we so prize individual effort? Why do we put ourselves through solos? You know, someone said that the world's a stage and each must play a part. Fate had me playing in love with you as my sweetheart. Act 1 was when we met. I loved you at first glance. You read your lines so cleverly and never missed a cue. Then came Act 2. You seemed to change and you acted strange, and why, I'll never know. And Don Aitkin knows every word. Honey, you lied to me when you said you loved me, and I had no cause to doubt you, but I'd rather go on hearing your lies than go on living without you. Now the stage is bare, and I'm standing there with emptiness all around, and if you won't come back to me, then they can bring the curtain down. Is your heart filled with pain? Will you come back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? 53, when people are young, they cannot see what age is and what might lie ahead, and so they're fearless. But people grow more fearful as they see what might be in store. We salute fearless elders next year: Elizabeth Cameron Dowman, Jack Charles, Aldo Jurgala, the Canberra Dance Theatre's Gold program. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part: you've got a head start if you are among the very young at heart. 54, and what about your old cars? Going, gone. Will there be manual electric cars? From Summernats to Vintage to Morris to Holden to the Electric Car Festival, we are cars, but now they are a guilty pleasure. Must we give up guilty pleasures? Who and where is developing the environmentally safe vehicle that can still handle like a sports car? For those of us who are raised on motorbikes and spend the rest of our lives needing a car we can feel in some way, most electric cars so far make me feel as if I'm in a gopher. Little old lady from Pasadena. 55, the future of housing. Density, necessary, niche, exemplary. What about those who crave a bungalow by Robin Boyd? Again, is it a sacrifice of pleasure? Yet Alain de Botton instructs us to have beautiful houses so we can live more happily in good design and thus remain more productive. How do we resolve these conflicts? Will new 8-star apartments produce endorphins? 56, like marked graves, why do we need statues of people? Just so they don't disappear from view? There's a whole conference about public art called Touch, and you'll be able to indulge in that next year in May. 57, what's funny? Why do we laugh? What's the chemistry of comedy? Is Schadenfreude most obvious in satire? When we see the misfortunes and mistakes of others, we laugh. A person trips in ice or grass. We laugh. We shouldn't, but we do. There's plenty of satire and plenty of laughs next year. The Wharf Review, Prime Time, the Major Minor Party, and Canberra Confidential. 58, spontaneity. Some fear it, some love it. There's the musical offering. The gentleman in front has produced the musical offering with friends, a spontaneous, fabulous musical act every day of the year. 365 acts of spontaneous music throughout Canberra. next year. We have local gold by the cashews, guerrilla gigs that will come up wherever you least expect them. Pop-up by Canberra Lad, pop-up things about design and architecture. There's an Improvention, which is an improvising festival. There's guerrilla gigs, there's flash mobbing. We live in a present age. Everything must be immediate. When I suggest to Mark Scott at the ABC that they record multi-camera our huge event around the lake on March the 11th and then edit it and play it on television the next day on the real birthday, he says, no, that doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants to see anything a day after. You've all got to see it live. We live in a very, very present age, an age of instant 24 feed of tweets and treats. 59. So what place history? Why does it matter to record stories and tell stories? What place the historian? Our cultural institutions mainly preserve history, memory. Does that become even more important as we go through such a present age, and therefore more important in this city in particular? What do we want? Everything. When do we want it? Now. 60. When glass first became more resilient, it was the flavour of architecture. What's next? Will glass become a thing of art alone as new materials are developed? Check out the Canberra Glassworks next year. 61. Should we walk in others' shoes for a while? Not just the St Vinny's CEO sleep out, but other disability. We have the Boundless program for all areas of ability in all kids starting next year. Sailability have their championships, the access class in boating. That's there as well. Why does our patron Sir William Dean have this empathy naturally? Has he just seen a lot? Is ignorance the source of a lack of generosity, not knowing how well off we are? Do we have to go to Dili or go to parts of Africa in order to develop empathy? This comes back to the question of generosity. 62, what is the contradiction about democracy at the moment? There's going to be a forum at MOAD, Museum of Australian Democracy, looking at the Arab Spring. They lay down their lives for, yet a frightening percentage of young Australians are blasé about democracy. How do we explain this? How do we combat this? Could it really be the case that Britain becomes a republic before we do, making Prince Charles king, but only of Australia? 63, how do we solve the contradictions of a pluralist society, e.g. Aboriginal law versus white law, rules about wearing the hijab? We celebrate multiculturalism, but yet who is prepared to go to the sharp end and work on how we resolve inevitable treading on each other's toes? We need some rigour in this. Cross Currents is a forum at Belconnen, and also this is a kind of thing we can go on exploring at the Museum of Democracy. 64, what are the greatest moments in Canberra's history? The most memorable. The dismissal is pretty wild. I know a lot of people who would like to, just met in recent days, people who were there and say they'd like to have a bit of a reunion outside on Parliament House on the dismissal day. Most people in Australia remember where they were when the dismissal happened. I know where I was. I was in a rehearsal for Brecht's The Threepenny Opera, and the director, Wal Cherry, and the dramaturg, John Willan, changed the end. So when the guy came down to give Macheath his release, they turned him into the Governor-General. It was played by Norman Yem, and he came down and he actually released Mac the Knife from hanging. But, you know, what are the others? The audience, of course, the bourgeois audience for the opera, had absolutely no idea that we were doing satire, and that is the case with satire sometimes, that nobody gets it at all. The Apology, Mabo, what are the others? Make your list. Und der Haifisch, der hat Zähne. 65, what is the right thing to do? That's a big challenge. Art is a great way to allow us to think about this. A terrific play called As We Forgive by Tom Holloway from Tasmania, part of collected works, but also Henry IV. 66, is republicanism really over? What shape is activism now taking? A conference and a forum called Inside Out, which basically looks at the way young Indigenous activists are working, not protesting on the outside, not marching, but actually the young ones are going into institutions, they're becoming lawyers and artists, and they're doing it from the inside out. Maybe they've got some advice for the Republican cause. But also, I think we could have a bit of expression of that in the Brumbies versus the British and Irish Lions. Just let it rip. 67, can anyone work out the complexities of the ACT's relationship to Jervis Bay? There is a great exhibition called Wind Songs and Water Lines, and there's going to be a vintage car rally from Jervis Bay all the way to Canberra. So let's think about what it's... I can't understand it at all. 68. Someone said Canberra is a regional city with fantastic big city institutions. Actually, the person said world class. But as world class is only said by those who aren't, I refuse to use the word or let it be used in connection with any project I work on. Dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, dum, da-da-dum. Number 69, Soissons neuf. Can the Australian Sex Party really become the party of conscience? 70, the Capathetical. Enough said, great for the mind. The exhibition opens at the Gallery of Australian Design on March the 6th next year. 71, how on earth did Robin Boyd manage to forget the staircase in Manning Clark House? 72, sports history is great. There's a conference next year, but what about sports futures? The challenge of sporting millionaires, cheating, drugs, etc., versus sports models as sports people as role models for kids. The Olympic rhetoric versus Lance Armstrong. Huge contradiction sitting there. Who's going to sort that out? 73, what's jazz? Not that. Ramachandran hooked up Paul Grabowski's brain to a series of computers and saw what was going on. Are jazz musicians the most alive people in the world? Stephen, you probably agree with that. The most alive in the world. There's going to be a great bit of improvisation, spontaneous music around Capital Jazz at the Street Theatre next year. Why doesn't everybody like jazz? New, fresh, instant, never to be repeated. Why do people go to the same plays? Canberra Theatre Centre is throwing out that challenge this year by offering a lot of new plays, as well as some old pleasers as well. Let's see how the audience fares. Why do people want to hear things they already know? Why is the unfamiliar so very challenging? I once had a conversation with the philosopher John Armstrong, who said to me, I asked him, are we inherently conservative? And John said, yes, we are inherently conservative because the status quo is that we are alive, and the alternative is that we are dead. Therefore, we always go on to preserve our natural habit, is to preserve the status quo. We are all inherently conservative. 74, contemplating the brain. Songs whose lyrics have not passed my lips for 45 years suddenly arise unbidden, word perfect, and I just start singing them. Contemplating the working of the brain at any of our scientific institutions. School days, dear old golden rule days, reading and writing and arithmetic, taught to the tune of a hickory stick. I see a few people nodding, as did my dear little mother with a light in her eyes when she can't actually remember very much now, saying, I remember that. And it was the same with a wonderful architect called Margareta Schutte-Lohotsky, about whom I wrote a play. I met her in her 90s. She lived to be 102. She had been in prison throughout World War II because she'd enrolled in Red Vienna and got nabbed by the Nazis in Vienna. She was in Dachau through most of the war. I said to her, because I was trying to construct this piece, she said, you know, once the Americans came in, well, first of all, the guards left, and we didn't dare walk outside because we didn't know what was outside. We had no idea, so we just stayed there like caged animals, frightened to move out. But when the Americans and the Canadians came in, they picked us up in the trucks and they took us out. And she said, and we were singing on the trucks. And I said, what were you singing? What was it? She says, I can't remember. And so I said, was it this? Forward, without forgetting. And her eyes too lit up and she said, ja, das war. It was Eisler's Solidaritätslied. It's fantastic the way the brain simply flicks into action with things you haven't thought about for a very long time. 75, further contradictions, cars and speed. If we want to prevent motor accidents and death, why make cars that can do more than 100? Alcohol. The message in moderation actually doesn't work. So many things are about resolving contradiction. 76, or is contradiction the one great given of life? Is life simply coincidence and contradiction we spend our time on earth trying to resolve? Thomas Hardy was criticised for using too many coincidences in his plots, but surely everything that led to the conception of each and every one of us was a coincidence, a miracle of time and place. How two people met and eventually fell in love or not, but they made love, a matter of seconds, billions and trillions of seconds that then determined that we would live. 77, do we still need to do women things? Do we still need to promote women as a separate category in sport, in art, in business? Because we have done that in 2013 through the Centenary. But I ask, when will this end? That'll be a good day. 78, does watching dance produce endorphins? 79, is it true that many women go to the ballet, as to the AFL, to perv on men's beautiful bodies? There'll be plenty of opportunities next year during the Centenary. Monument, which is the beautiful piece with the Australian Ballet about the building of Parliament House, preceded by a piece called Etude, which explores classical technique in the ballet. Gary Stewart, also the choreographer of that, choreographs G, a really tough version of Giselle with people with not very many clothes on. Adelina Larson has a new piece. The Rameau piece that is with Sydney Dance and Richard Tognetti. Whoa, what a splendid thing. Black by Bangara, Hit the Floor Together by QL2. Lots of great bodies to watch and enjoy and get the message that way. 80, just look at Tournament of Minds if you want to experience as challenge and spontaneity. But also most team sports. So Tournament of the Minds, little kids facing challenges, solving problems, but in teams, a really interesting prospect. But also most team sport is like that. The ACT is, after all, and has the highest number of people per capita participating in sport. Team sport as the ultimate spontaneity next to jazz. 81, the interactive world. John Rose, the current Don Banks Fellow, is preparing something called the Canberra Pursuit, in which young Canberrans are building crazy bicycles, which they will then ride around a responsive track, which will create the soundtrack to which they ride. Participation is all. Another question of what place excellence. Passive reception of excellence is no longer so widely admired. Everyone is said to want to be involved, but is this true? Are there some who just wish to observe and let things go on and osmose into their bodies and their own actions in their own good time? We do have the Chief Minister's Inclusions Awards, and on the long birthday weekend on March the 8th to the 12th, there will be a lot of ways in which you can get active if that's your bag. 82, does the ukulele produce endorphins? Or is this highly subjective? Is it like that joke into which different instruments can be placed? What's the definition of a gentleman? A man who can play the saxophone, accordion, ukulele, but doesn't. I'm no gentleman. I'm no gentleman, nor any lady either. Plaisir d'amour ne dure qu'un moment, chagrin d'amour dure toute la vie. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. The ukulele is versatile. You can play Bach on a uke. I can't, but Timothy Ho can. There's a ukulele festival next year. 83 is the ultimate passivity watching a film. We sit in the dark, like a theatre or concert hall, but there is a frisson of possibility there that something might go wrong. More like sport. Anything can happen, hence the actor and sportsman's fear. But for a film, there has been a massive amount of work from an army of makers to produce perhaps 100 minutes of 2D work, and we sit there and rarely applaud. The man that one stellar actor called God will be in Canberra this time next year for the Canberra International Film Festival's new piece, Body of Work. 84, how do you make theatre out of epidemiology? 85, what is epidemiology? Skinny arte. 86, Why do certain works like Shakespeare, which I mentioned before, hang in there? Stravinsky's Rite of Spring is 100 years old next year, and Carmina Burana is nearly 80 and based on much older texts. Does an artist or an architect or a scientist ever guess they have done something timeless? I suspect not. There's also a lot of Chopin next year, 87, and there's a lot of new music happening next year. Andrew Schultz, Matthew Heinsohn, Vincent Plush, Mary Finsterer, Huey Benjamin, Michael Solis, and many, many more. The Canberra International Music Festival is not scared of new music. Why do so many fear it? What is that exactly? 88, are posters art? Is anything made and intended for commercial use art? Huge exhibition of Toulouse-Lautrec, and a huge exhibition at Megalo of their great posters. 89, why are competitions in sport the core meaning of sport and competition in art deemed somewhat distasteful? 90, is there any way that we can hook up everyone in the gyms, like the ones on walking and running machines, and get them to power their own facilities? Could runners return power to the grid? I had a friend once who said, come the revolution, the first to go will be the joggers. Physical, physical, we're gonna get physical. Let me hear your body talk. I don't think so. 91, is nostalgia, even for Olivia Newton-John, justifiable? A show at M16 is called Nostalgia. There will be Holdens, Morries, railways, skating, films about cars in Spin in October. 92, do we actually use sled dogs in Australia? 93, can we imagine Canberra without the lake now? I know many people in Canberra do remember the place before the lake. Being by water is vital to me. I always try to stay by water if I can, with a view of water. What's that about? Do other people need to stay near special things? I like a bookstore nearby too. I don't need to be near a pub or a TAB office. That's a good thing here. 94, are there some people who don't like flowers? Are they called florophobics? We have Floriad, Bloom, Wattle Chats, and of course the beautiful Canberra bells, all to experiment whether we love or don't love flowers. 95, is there a rationale for making Masters tournaments 35 years and up? Seems a bit cruel on the oldies, really. Is it time to reassess Masters tournaments? 96, do you ever consider why Elvis died so young? I think I know the reason to that one. Excess. Poor boy, had nothing, got everything too quick. Well, I want to party in a county jail. Prison band was there and they began to wail. Band was jumping up, the joint began to swing. You should have heard the rock that jailbird sing. That was the very first song that I took out with my first ukulele, a plastic one, went into the schoolyard when I was 12 and understood that if you sang Elvis in the schoolyard, even with a ukulele, you would draw a crowd. I was very bad at sport, so hence a career was born. Thank you very much, Elvis. The girl next door cried when he had his hair cut for the military. I saw Jailhouse Rock on first release. There's going to be a fantastic exhibition of young Elvis photographs at the National Portrait Gallery at the end of 2013. We don't even have to stop for 1 minute to ask about Elvis and endorphins, his or ours. 97, why is it so hard to eliminate discrimination? 98, what exactly is the psychology of prejudice, prejudging people, cities or countries? It's about fear, isn't it? Somewhere it's all about fear. 99, how not to live a fearful life. 100, why, when asked to challenge the mind, am I inclined just to ask the questions? As Brecht said, the surest of all sure things is doubt. What will I be doing after 2013? I have no idea. The Centenary has already begun. I opened the exhibition Citizen just a few days ago, and it goes through to 2013. I've seen the signs up for things at the National Library. We have artists all over the place visiting. There are incredibly clever people preparing the work for next year, but the end is more than a year away, so they say, and the challenge is to ensure that it never ends, that this city keeps powering along and keeps challenging its citizens and their minds and their ingenuity into infinity. among the stars, which is exactly where we began. You live through the years, so pay the price. Let one dream come true. You only live twice.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the tradition at the Don Aitkin Lecture Series is that Don spends a minute or two reflecting on the presentation that we've just heard, and then I draw the evening to a close. I'm not sure you bargained for this one, Don, but it's over to you, pal.
I knew that girl would do something like this. She is very, very good. Very, very good. Now I have the impossible task, and so I'll make it very short. I've got to draw together the threads of that 100 chants, so I'll do 3. Elvis and disabilities and sport. Here you go. Now, I think you learnt the wrong version of that song. I think the original version is Al Jolson, because at the end he says, as the stage is there and I'm standing there in the part of a broken clown, and if you don't come back to me, then they can ring the curtain down. And you had the Elvis version, because there are 2 differences. So there you go, that's that one. Now disability... these things are imprinted on us. I will send you, Rob, an essay I wrote of the music that came to me, and that's in my head and is imprinted in there, so that, as you say, well, you didn't say quite, but Bev's version is that our mind is a series of filing cabinet drawers with files in them, and as we get older, we first of all lose which drawer the file is in, and then we lose which file the thing is in, and then suddenly, for no reason at all, it just comes back. And so I'll send you that, because I mean, you're a much, much younger person, but you'll resonate to some of it. Now, disabilities in sport is very straightforward. It's not widely known that Stevie Wonder is a very fine golfer, and this got to be known by Tiger Woods, who was a great admirer of Stevie Wonder, and went to him and said, I understand that you're a wonderful golfer. Well, said Stevie Wonder, I do the best I can. He said, but you're blind. I mean, how do you do it? He said, oh, well, I have 2 caddies. I have the caddy that carries the bag, and I have the caddy with the bell. Oh, he said, how does it work? Well, he said, the caddy with the bag hands me the right club and says, you're going to go that way. It's a number 2 wood. You should try and get about 180 yards out of it. We're in America, they don't talk about meters. And then the man with my caddy with the bell goes, and he tinkles up there. And so I hear the sound, and of course my ears are very good. I'm blind, I can't see anything, so I hear. So I line myself up, and I hit the ball to where that sound was. Oh, he said, that's incredible. Dare I ask, what's your handicap? Yeah, he says, I hover around 2. Oh, said Stevie Wonder, would you like to have a game with me? Oh, he said, no, I couldn't possibly do that. He said, well, I'd love to. I mean, I'd pay for it. Oh, said Stevie Wonder, no, I couldn't possibly do that. I actually only play golf for money. Oh, said Tiger Woods, that's fine. Well, let's have $1 a hole or whatever. Oh, he said, no, that's real money. $10,000 a hole. Oh, I couldn't do that, said Tiger Woods. I couldn't do that. And he said, Tiger, you're well off. I'm actually better off than you are. I've been soaking it away, and I've got nothing to spend it on. So that's what I do. Oh, okay, said Tiger Woods. When would you like to play? Next Wednesday night, said Stevie Wonder.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Robyn Archer has taken us on, I think, on a number of journeys this evening. She's taken us on a musical journey from Edith Piaf to Crosby, Stills and Nash to Elvis. She's taken us on a global journey from Chicago to Glyndebourne to a cemetery in Paris to Jarvis Bay. She's taken us, I think, on a humorous journey. I loved Livres sans frontières, Books Without Borders, and I'm still scratching my head on whether the Australian Sex Party will become the true party of conscience in Australia. So for a kaleidoscopic lecture, which gets us ready for the centenary in 2013, and for a tour de force, please join me in thanking Robyn Archer.